G'day guys, how's it going? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I wanted to share with you a bit of a story about my own personal computer. This one sitting right here. A company called Coolermaster who makes this CPU cooler, and my journey for upgrading the case, adding some RGB and also overclocking the CPU. But this video is going to be me kind of having a bit of a rant and a bit of a vent about Coolermaster and their marketing strategies, the help that I've received from a company called JW Computers here in Sydney who have been really helpful. But it's going to be me mainly talking about the challenges that I've faced trying to simply add some RGB to my computer and how I feel about this whole compatibility with different motherboards and manufacturers' RGB ecosystem. So buckle in for this story. Feel free to leave any thoughts or opinions down below, and let's begin. Alright, so where do we begin? This is a bit of a rant, like I said, a bit of a story about my experiences with a company called Coolermaster and my experiences dealing with a retail shop called JW Computers, but mostly about my journey for upgrading my system. So if you watched the last video, or if you hadn't, I'll leave a link to it up in the corner here somewhere. But basically I wanted to take everything from my old computer case, my little thermal take, black ITX case, pretty bland and boring, and essentially chuck everything into a new case which had a bit more style. So I got the one from Phanteks, the Evolv Enthoo ITX case in white with some tempered glass, which has some benefits. The case has more room for extra radiators or bigger radiators. It has obviously the tempered glass to show off the interior, which will also help show off any RGB which I planned to add to the system. And also obviously the CPU will hopefully get some better cooling, some better airflow, and so that means that the processor should be able to hit 5 GHz without thermal throttling. So where this story sort of comes from, there'll be a part 3 to this, by the way. This is part 2. Is I got the case, got everything put in, I delidded the CPU, that was all cool. The computer was working perfectly fine. But when I was running stress tests on the processor at stock speeds, it was still hitting 100 degrees Celsius. So I thought, okay, there's something wrong. So then what I did is I reached out to the people at Facebook. Australian PC Enthusiasts is a group that I'm a part of, and I shared with them my experience with what happened, and they're all saying to me that there's something wrong. So we did some troubleshooting and some diagnosis, and it turns out that my old CPU cooler was faulty. So the pump wasn't working properly, it was making some weird noises, and everyone's like, hey listen, like it shouldn't be hitting 100 degrees in your current configuration, considering that I had done a delid on the processor as well. So then I took the cooler out, I contacted JW Computers through Facebook Messenger, and I spoke to them about what happened, and because I bought the cooler from them, and they were like super helpful. So took the cooler out and returned it to the store, and what they were happy to do was give me a replacement or an exchange or choose a different cooler to the same value. So I paid $140 for the old cooler, and so I was like, okay, that's now a store credit. I picked a new cooler which was pretty great. So this cooler here was the MasterLiquid ML240R RGB with addressable RGB lighting with controller, compatible with Aura Sync. It's a 2x120 rad, so double the radiator size that I used to have, and everything's obviously RGB. So I'm thinking, fuck yeah, this is gonna be great. There's a win, I get a bigger radiator, I get RGB, it's gonna go great in the system. The performance of the cooler is gonna get a bit of a thermal boost, as in it's gonna be cooled even better. So I'm thinking, this is great. I had a faulty part, move on, new cooler, put it in, no problems, right? So I did the installation, I followed all the guides. I also followed a guy called Gear Sneakers, who's an Australian tech YouTuber up in Queensland. So shout out to him, because he's done a few installation videos with this cooler already, and there's very few videos out there on doing the installation. So I sort of followed what he was doing, and I followed the information that was included in the box and online. and I just could not get the Aura Sync software because I've got a Asus Z270i motherboard. Couldn't get the Asus Aura Sync software to sync up with the RGB controller, and I was just going crazy at this point. I was just not knowing like what I'd done wrong. Like I've built hundreds and hundreds of computers. This is the first one though that I've done with RGB, so I'm thinking maybe it is me, maybe I have done something wrong. I know I don't have a USB 2 header on the motherboard, but in the box they actually include an additional accessory if you don't have a header to plug it into the back of the motherboard, which is what I was planning on doing. So I did all that, still couldn't get it to talk to the Aura Sync software. So then the next step was I went to the Coolermaster.com website. They had a set of instructions, which is the same as what come in the box. I was like, okay, this is not really helping me. But then I went onto the Asia Pacific website and I found the product. I went to the downloads page, and what I found was that there was additional manuals. There was manuals for the controller. There was manuals for the software that is still in beta. There was also a firmware update, which wasn't on the Coolermaster.com website, by the way. All of this was only on the Asia Pac website. So that was something that I just happened to stumble across. So once I did the downloads of the manuals and read everything again, I was like, no, okay, I've done everything properly. I even did the firmware upgrade. So I could upgrade the controller, no problems. But after I upgraded the firmware on the controller, still I couldn't get Aura Sync to work with this particular cooler on my Z270i motherboard from Asus. So then I contacted the people at JW who were like, bring it in. So I brought it into them and they had a look at it and they're like, yeah, no worries, we can fix this, no worries, easy as. A guy called Scott's like, I don't like RGB, but you know, I can see where the issue is, we'll fix it. He calls me up at lunchtime and says, hey man, listen, your cooler is not compatible with this motherboard because of the header. You don't have a header on your motherboard. I was like, yeah, I know, but this box comes like a little breakout to go in the back of the case. He's like, oh yeah, okay, I see that. And so he basically, we get off the phone, I send him all the links as well to the Coolermaster Asia Pac website. He looks at all of it. I don't hear from him until 4 o'clock when I call him back up and go, what's going on? And he says to me that the people at Coolermaster who he reached out to said, it might work, it might not work. And I guess this is where I'm getting to, this is the bottom line here, is that Coolermaster aren't 100% sure whether their own product that they've made is compatible with something like Asus Aura Sync or the ASRock or the MSI branded motherboards, even though they put it on the box. And I think it's really disappointing that a big company like Coolermaster, first of all, can't get their manuals and downloads all centralized in one location or be consistent across multiple websites. They put things on the boxes like compatible with this or compatible with that, even though they might not have even tested it, because they even said to the guy JW, like, it's a 50-50, it might not work, it's not 100% compatible yet. So I think they've just kind of rushed out and put a product on the market that isn't fully tested yet. And you know what, I'd be happy if the product wasn't compatible and they actually wrote it on the box, or they said that it's not compatible with the Z2 series chipset and only the later models, because then as a customer I can make an informed decision about what I'm buying. So I'm planning on, the next step in this story is that the guys at JW actually said that they had determined that my cooler was faulty, that there was a known issue, that the controller wasn't working properly. So I'm holding my breath. I am still, I guess, leaving my hands in the fate of Coolermaster and JW. They've ordered in a new replacement cooler, the exact same one, because I do like this cooler. I think it's great. It actually does function perfectly fine as a cooler, but the RGB part is the part that's kind of broken right now, which is what I want, you know. I've actually bought more parts from Coolermaster. I bought the Coolermaster magnetic RGB strip, which is going to go into the motherboard as well, and they're going to put it all in for me. I'm not doing any of this anymore. I'm kind of done. My girlfriend's kind of done. She's been seeing me fucking deal with this for like 2 weeks now, so I'm kind of over it. She's kind of over it, and I'm just like, you know what, my time's not worth all this energy that I've put in. So hopefully this time next week I'll be doing a part 3 update with a new cooler in there, with the RGB working, with the magnetic strip in there. It looks all pretty, it's all done. and I can put this to bed. But I really do hope that if anyone's out there and they're watching this, that they take away that you can't necessarily always trust what manufacturers are putting on the box. You know, you see Linus talking about shit manufacturers say about them putting gaming on everything, and gaming stuff is just like this word that is used now to help sell product, but it actually doesn't make any difference. And I think that companies like Coolermaster, Thermaltake, Asus, like there's hundreds and hundreds of manufacturers out there that are probably doing this, probably putting stamps on boxes to sell product, but are actually not being tested. And then, you know, people leave bad reviews, or people leave, people have like a bad taste in their mouth with a particular brand because they feel like they've been sort of taken advantage of and their time's been wasted, because that's definitely what's happened to me. But like I said, you know, I know that issues happen with all kinds of computers and all kinds of configurations, and I hope that this issue does get resolved. And, you know, if you have any questions, or if you want to leave any comments or any input, then feel free to leave that down below. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you sometime next week for part 3. Cheers.
You never know what's around the next corner.